Well, I personally don't think they're going to get 6 weeks of warning. I think maybe they might be lucky if they get 6 days of warning, and more than likely it'll be 2 days of warning. And they were told a month and a half ahead of time so that way they'd have time to decide what they wanted to put in their bags.
Mm-hmm.
And that 6 weeks of warning is nonsense. I mean, why would they give them 6 weeks of warning knowing that they'll blab the whole thing to everybody they ever knew prior to being packed up? I think they'll be lucky if they get 1 or 2 days of warning. They'll get called and say, it's time to go, and they'll have 15 minutes to get ready to head out. Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, knowing how these guys operate, I don't believe that they'll get 2 days of warning. I mean, they might get 1 day or 6 hours or, a half day or 1 day or 2 days. I don't think they'll get more than 2 days. I mean, really, do you?
I think they have a good idea what the trajectory of this thing is, but I think we're not really going to see it until it's right up on our ass.
Well, I'll tell you what. That would be my guess, that we won't see it until it's on us. But I will tell you one thing. We'll have some really good warnings if everybody's looking up and paying attention. First off, they'll notice red dust on the windshield of their vehicles. And at first, it'll be light dust, indicating that it's 10, 15 hours away. If they notice that the dust is real noticeable on their windshield, they can bet that it's in less than 10 hours away. If they have heavy red dust on their windshields, it's only a matter of hours away, and they'd better immediately take cover because they're out of time. It's too late to decide to load this or that up. I don't think there'll be a lot of warning, but when we were looking at it on the Hubble, this red dust field appeared to be going out at least as far as maybe 2 times the size of the planet. So, that means that it's probably a few 100,000 miles going out into space around it, all the way around it, which means that just before it arrives, which will be a matter of hours, we'll start seeing red dust coming out of the atmosphere onto everything. And of course, a vehicle windshield would be the best thing to spot it on, because then you'll be able to see its true color and realize that you're seeing the red iron oxide dust from it. And that'll be probably between that and the earthquakes, and I think probably as it approaches, we'll start to hear the electromagnetic interference between it and us, maybe see bizarre events in the sky with the clouds, and, maybe colors flashing around in the atmosphere. There'll probably be quite a variety of warnings that it's approaching and that it's within hours of passing. It's going to be a lot more. The CIA people I talked to said that they're expecting at least a 220 to 230 degree roll, maybe a little more. They fully expect the center of the United States to be at the equator when it's over. No. I'm saying 220 to 230. That's what they're guessing. But then again, you got to remember.
That's still a pretty good clip.
Yeah, well, this thing's going to go by and give us a spin, and that's where we're going to supposedly stop. They told me they ran 10,000 case scenarios on shifting the planet upside down. They did it 10,000 times on the Earth. They tried different locations to see what they'd come up with, and it averaged out at 220 to 230 degree roll. So, I think probably them knowing the trajectory isn't, I don't think that's a matter of question. I'm sure they know the trajectory. I'm sure they know the exact minute it's going to show up. I've heard a lot of stories that I would only tell you in private about this, because it's so far over the top, most people would go into immediate denial if they heard it. So, the most I can say is that they better be expecting at least a 180 to a 220 degree pole roll when this happens, And as far as that bulge around the center of the planet, I got news for everybody. This thing is going to do a very fast roll, and that water is going to go everywhere. The Lord warned you. The oceans will roar from pole to pole. Is there some part of that nobody understands?
The average depth?
Yeah, what's the average depth of the ocean around the world?
10,000 feet. 10,000 feet.
It's about 2.5 miles. That's the average depth of the ocean. Although the depth does increase at the equator because there's spots where it's averaging 7 miles deep. So that tells you there's a bulge at the center of the planet.
Which would be, man.
Now just imagine the North Pole rolling into the position of the South Pole. That means that the North Pole has got to go through that bulge before it can reach its final resting place. So we're going to have 7 miles of water doing some serious washing around on the land.
So let me ask you this: if we did a 220-degree pole shift, would that be an instantaneous pole shift, or would that be a?
No, it's going to be, as I understand, it's going to happen over the course of half an hour to an hour. And actually, they said 28 minutes.
That's pretty instantaneous.
That's pretty fast, yeah.
That's pretty fast.
We're going to probably see 400-mile-an-hour wind on the surface. We're going to see big-time water splashing around. We're going to see earthquakes that are so bad that it'll set off every volcano ridge on the entire planet. Every volcano ridge on the entire planet will be going off. The tectonic plates will be being jerked apart by probably miles apart, as the surface of the earth will be like a bowl of jello. It'll be flexing around so hard that every tectonic plate everywhere on the planet will open. The volcanoes will be shaken so hard that they'll start erupting. It's going to be one horrific scenario after another. You're looking at hell on earth here. This ain't going to be no joke. This is going to really eliminate a lot of people because either they didn't know about it or they didn't believe, or whatever the case may be. It's going to be a real shame for them because I'll tell you, when Nibiru rolls the planet upside down, it's going to kill 4 billion people. And that's the first day. And the rest will survive on. But very few survivors will still be around when the weather finally gets good enough to get a full growing season, because they just were not prepared enough to make it. And it's going to eliminate a lot of people. I mean, I wouldn't be under these underground facilities that all of these elite people think they're going to hide out in, because they're going to be torn to pieces by the flexing of the planet. I mean, the crust of this planet is going to really act up big time. And there won't be any survivors in those underground facilities. Well, I'll tell you what. I really don't think that the survivorship of this will be real high because of the denial. The level of denial in this country is obvious by Department of Homeland Security planning to fight everybody. The United States government has been terrorizing everybody around the world forever and ever. The churches are all in denial. I mean, the Chinese, they take babies and cook them up into stew and stuff. It's taken over this planet. And that's why I said about the churches being asleep. The churches have not protested this at all. And they're going to pay dear for having kept their mouths shut and been politically correct. This is the one that's going to cost them their ass. And one evil thing stacked on top of another. And all of these people that have been condoning all of this stuff, they don't talk about it. They just, they own stock in the companies and they think they're getting rich, and what they're actually doing is getting ready to die, and they don't even know it. I tell people all the time, guess what? You're probably not going to be alive this time next year, so don't worry about what you're doing. Well, but, one of his favorite subjects is to talk about giants, because Our military has ran into quite a few of them in caves in the Middle East over there. And they've came across several ones that were alive. They've even managed to capture a couple of them. They've had to kill a few of them because these guys aren't little guys. Apparently they caught one recently that was, I don't know, I guess about 14 feet tall, and they had a hell of a time subduing him. They discovered that their small arms fire were not very effective against these guys, but, you know, when I think about the size of that spaceship that I saw last year going across the mountains here in Colorado, I don't know how big these guys are. Steve Quayle says they're real big, that some of them are as tall as 38 feet. This thing was big enough to where it could have had a few thousand of those 38-foot tall guys in it, and it would have been no problem, because I'm telling you, this thing was at least 1,000 feet in diameter, maybe more, and at least a couple of miles long. I mean, it was big. I don't have any trouble understanding that there could be races out there that are real big guys, and there's no way that you're going to be able to fight these guys to kill them or anything. You know, if you think about what happened, when was that, about 10, 15 years ago, that big one landed in Russia right in the town square, and these great big guys got out of it and were working on it while the whole town stood around and watched and went, holy shit, look how big these guys are. And they were great big guys. I guess they were about 12 feet tall or something, and they were working on their spaceship. And when they got it repaired, they flew off in it. But, you know, it landed right in the middle of the town square. Mm-hmm. And everybody in the whole town saw it. And it was a couple of mentions on the news about it, but not really too much. Mainly in the little rag newspapers and stuff were pictures of it. And a lot of people took pictures of it. They took pictures of the guys that were working on it, and they were great big suckers. So, you know, are there big guys out there? Yeah, there are. Well, the Bible says we're going to see all kinds of stuff happening. And I can tell you, these military people have been so far out of control for so long, I think the American people would be terribly shocked if they ever got away from their vomit TV and started checking out what their government's been doing. They would not only be horrified, but they'd be in shock and horrified at the same time, just how really far out of control these people actually are. And all of this stuff has been kept a secret because the American people are willfully stupid. And this is going to come home to haunt them. I can guarantee you there's going to be trouble on the horizon they can't even imagine. And I can tell you, just the thought of 14, 15-foot tall guys dressed in military uniforms doing God knows what. I mean, I've always thought since day one that the pyramids were built prior to the last pole shift, and that they were stacked up probably by these big guys, because there's really no other explanation for how stones that big got mounted up. I mean, you look at some of those things, and the architecture and design and construction is just so far over the top. And now we've got all of these ragheads over there in Egypt talking about they want to tear them down.
Yeah,
well,
I was
you know
talking
what?
about that earlier today.
Yeah, this is just insanity. They took out their dictators around the world. They've been taking out the dictators so that they could put in their dummies and get their one world order thing going, which is how they've got to do it. They've got to take out all the leaders in every country, and then place their Rothschild dictators in position. And of course, you know, that'll bring in their one world order because they'll all work for the same guy. But you know, now they've got these morons down there in Egypt that want to tear down the pyramids. They want to do this. They want to do that. You know, I don't know how they plan on doing it. You know, what are they going to put a nuclear weapon in the thing and blow it up or what? Because they're sure as hell not equipped to dismantle it manually. They'll have to blow the things apart. They put red dust on the windshield of their vehicles. And at first it'll be light dust, indicating that it's 10, 15 hours away. If they notice that the dust is real noticeable on their windshield, they can bet that it's in less than 10 hours away. If they have heavy red dust on their windshields, it's only a matter of hours away, and they'd better immediately take cover because they're out of time. It's too late to decide to load this or that up. I don't think there'll be a lot of warning, but you know, when we were looking at it on the Hubble, this red dust field appeared to be going out at least as far as maybe 2 times the size of the planet. So, you know, that means that it's probably a few 100,000 miles going out into space around it, all the way around it, which means that just before it arrived, 6 hours or, you know, a half day or 1 day or 2 days, I don't think they'll get more than 2 days. I mean, really, do you?
I think they have a good idea what the trajectory of this thing is, but I think we're not really going to see it until it's right up on our ass.
Well, I'll tell you what, that would be my guess, that we won't see it until it's on us. But I will tell you one thing, we'll have some really good warnings if everybody's looking up and paying attention. First off, they'll notice, knowing that they'll blab the whole thing to everybody they ever knew prior to being packed up. I think they'll be lucky if they get 1 or 2 days of warning. They'll get called and say, it's time to go, and they'll have 15 minutes to get ready to head out. Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. You know, I mean, you know, knowing how these guys operate, I don't believe that they'll get 2 days of warning. I mean, they might get 1 day or... Well, I personally don't think they're going to get 6 weeks of warning. I think maybe they might be lucky if they get 6 days of warning, and more than likely it'll be 2 days of warning. And they were told a month and a half ahead of time so that way they'd have time to decide what they wanted to put in their bags.
Mm-hmm.
And that 6 weeks of warning is nonsense. I mean, why would they give them 6 weeks of warning